Hi all, today we're going to be talking about Hossin. And Hossin is probably my second or third favorite con in the game, depending on how good I'm feeling on a good day, and how good Hossin is on a day. So do note this will all be from the perspective of a player who has played predominantly solo, and prioritizes good fights and directive grinding over playing for territory or alerts. This is also just all my opinion. I'm going to tell you what I like about this con, what I don't like about this con, what I think could be done to make this con a little bit better, even though I don't really think Hossin needs any changes immediately by any means. And in general, why Hossin is just kind of okay. I don't consider it to be the best con in the game like some players do, and I don't consider it to be bottom of the barrel like some other players do, although I very much used to. Hossin is decent. I think it has some problems, but on the whole, it's a relatively decent con that isn't marred by too many severe issues, outside of some problems with base design that are a personal skill issue, and, on the whole, problems with Connery being dead. So, because it's Connery, and Connery is dead, we start with Nascence, because this is where a lot of pop goes. Nascence is far and away the best three-man base in the game. It is single-handedly the best three-way base in the entire game, and it blows everything else completely out of the water. But there are still problems with it, in my opinion. So, while Nascence is particularly good at allowing players of all factions to push into it, namely given that this northern area right here has lots of good cover, it's easy to get Sunder's vehicles in here, and you can build construction bases if that's your forte. It does suffer a lot if you have to attack it from the southern side, because honestly, this entire southern section is a bitch to keep Sunderers alive in, because there's not a whole lot of hard cover here to work with, and ultimately, there's nothing really much protecting you from just being tank rushed or C4 rushed. So while I think Nascence is pretty good, I would make some small changes to it. Number one, I'd add significantly more hard cover for the southern area right here, marked within this yellow boundary, because I can use this to draw, instead of actually doing this in post or whatever. This idea is mostly just to keep southern Sunderers alive longer. I like Nascence as a fight, it's generally a good farm, which matters to me. And that's all Nascence really needs to be. Ultimately, Nascence is a pop sync. Nascence is a farming base. Nobody actually plays Nascence for territory, and if you genuinely do, this is not the kind of person you should be watching. Still, the other small change I would make to it is I would add some sort of infantry roof around this northern area between the northern building and the main building. Namely, the balcony is a little too hard and too easy to farm from the northern room. Northern room generally has very little cover for infantry trying to cross into the underground section of the base, so I would simply just add a little roof, and that is all I would really do. I think Nascence is pretty fine otherwise. Next discussion, the gates. Now, personally, I think Western Gate and Southern Gate are the best gates here, from my experience. I don't like Eastern Gate whatsoever. And pretty much the entire reason this comes down to the territory layout. And because this is unstable, this is going to be relatively hard to demonstrate the lattice of. Maybe I can filter my map a little bit more. I don't think I can, though. No, I can't. Unfortunate. So, I don't like a lot of the eastern bases. Most of the eastern bases, from bases like Woodman, to Ziggurat, to Nettlemire, to Eastern Sub, to Genesis Terraforming, to Bravada PMC, to even Vex Biologics, East Aachen Storage, and, most importantly, Haid is something that we're going to have an entire discussion about later. I don't like a lot of these bases. They're generally not fun to play in, they generally consist of a lot of just running from A to B, and they're also just boring, they're very generic, they're not fun to play in by any means. You also tend to just get shit on by air a whole lot, especially on this southeastern side of the map, kind of just in the east middle here. You generally get shit on by airplanes a whole lot here, and I wouldn't make a whole lot of changes to this area, but I would like to see pretty much all of these bases get minor redesigns in some way or another. Genesis Terraforming and Bravada in particular need some desperate layout changes because they're just abhorrent to play in. Eastern Sub could use an actually unique base design, like all the other construction site bases. Ziggurat and Nettlemire, just delete them, fuck it, I don't need them anymore, they're boring, they suck. And that's really all I would do to Eastern Hossin. It's not bad, but it's very generic, it's not very fun to play in. They're just bases, you know? They're just bases that you fight at. There's nothing... When I see Bravada show up, I'm not like, oh boy, Bravada, I can't wait to go to... No, it's just Bravada, oh joy. There might be a decent fight there. If not, oof. Next discussion, Haid. Haid blows super hard. Namely, the Sunder positions here all suck because this giant-ass plateau over here, meaning that you can only really Sunder in the southern area or this northern area, both of which actually suck to defend. The other problem is, it's a crash biolab. Cool concept on theory, actually sucks shit in reality, because a lot of the terrain here just isn't fun to play around, it's really easy to just crossfire vertical people everywhere. It's not a very fun base. Honestly, while I don't mind the pure concept of Haid, it should just be rebuilt from the ground up. I think Haid needs an entire redesign. if we're going to do this silly little crash biolab thing, just basically just cut the legs off a biolab and just plop the biolab onto the ground. An actual biolab is way more fun to fight in than Hade. That's all I would do. If you want to keep it as a crash biolab, just crash the fucking biolab. Keep even the roof screens on so that air can't fuck over the infantry actually having fun inside the biolab. And put hard spawns in the biolab. Please bring biolab hard spawns back. Other than that, Hade is fine. It's an okay farm, but it kind of sucks as a base to actually play in. Like I said, replace it with a biolab that's just sunken rather than a crashed biolab. Other than that, Hade is fine. Northern Lattice Lane stinks. I actively avoid playing on Northern Lattice Lane whenever I can, because Northern Lattice Lane just sucks ass. Awful Pit is one of the worst bases I've ever had the displeasure of playing in. Completely redesign it from the ground up. It stinks. Kessels is okay. Kessels can stay. Whatever. Kessels is fine. Fusion Lab is also fine. Needs some minor cover changes to generally more favor infantry, because it's too easy for aircraft to shit on infantry inside. But Chak can stay, and the rest of the bases from Nom to Chak Past never get fought at, so we're not even going to bother talking about them. Which is a real shame as a whole, because a lot of the Warpgate-style bases on Hossin are actually pretty neat and unique, and I'd like to get some time at them. Because as it stands, I really can't comment on a lot of them, because you just never fight there. Moving into the surrounding nations areas, what we'll deem Central Hossin. Central Hossin is big mid. Honestly, Central Hossin is not bad, but it's nothing I'm really enjoying to play on, and I will generally only play here if there's good population. Broken Veil sucks. Broken Veil stinks. Broken Veil needs an entire rebuild. I don't care. It just sucks. Either have a teleporter for attackers somewhere near the spawn, perhaps a teleporter that leaves you on top of this air pad. Other than that, just rebuild the fucking thing. Broken Veil sucks. Aachen Southern stinks. It's not fun to play in. Namely, add more cover because aircraft shit on infantry too easy. Woodman Ace also, like the previous Broken Veil, needs a teleporter closer to Point Room, and in general, it needs its Sunderer rules restrained. Let attackers park their Sunderers significantly closer to the base, maybe somewhere in this area. It should be generally easier to maintain Sunderers, and perhaps a teleporter right even here, in this little box I'm drawing for no reason whatsoever. In general, Woodman Ace is okay, but I think it's too much running across for all players involved. It's not really fun to attack because you just get doom stuck on this road here with no cover. It's not fun to defend because you just get shelled to shit as soon as you actually try and break out of the spawn room. It's okay though. Mossridge Command I've never played at, but a word on generic construction site bases as a whole. I actually like the generic construction sites. I think they're fine bases. Honestly, for what they are, they're fun to play in. That said, while I would like to see them all completely deleted, or barring like maybe one or two, and just turn into actual bases, if we're not going to just delete them outright, add some sort of unique flavor to each of them. Eastern Sub actually has some interesting things going on in its point room. Most of the other construction bases don't have this. Make them at least somewhat unique from each other. I'm not saying they have to be like all super interesting, but if we're just going to touch up Hossin, can we just make all these construction site bases just a little different in some way? Doesn't need to be huge, just make them more interesting to play in, if anything else. Moving into Southern Hossin, an area that you literally never ever play in, and for that reason there's pretty much nothing to talk about here other than Gurney Dam. I hate Gurney Dam. Gurney Dam is unfortunately one of the worst base designs I've ever had the displeasure of playing. It's not fun to attack because you generally just get zoned out hard into this top area. It's not fun to defend because you just spend all your fucking time running from point to point. If we're going to keep Gurney Dam the way it is, it needs a lot more hardcover. It needs a hell of a lot more hardcover and more favorable ways to attack it. For example, if we delete this teleporter that's here for defenders altogether and instead allow a road for attackers to put a Sunder in here, it could be a lot better. That way attackers would be able to attack from both this side of the base and this side of the base, while defenders have this one area. I would also just add more roofing or hardcover in general, because as it stands, there's way too many cross lanes to actually have fun in, and aircraft, once again, just shit on infantry with little to no vulnerability. It's not very fun. Oh look, the whole continent opened up. That'll make things a lot easier to talk about now. That's what it's like on Connery. It's literally just about to be 5 PM, and we're only just now getting the continent fully unlocked. Still, Gurney Dam it sucks, but I think it's relatively savable, just adding some more hardcover to it, adding another lane for attackers to push into. Because as it stands, just getting zoned by the bridges is terribly unfun, and you just get shat on by airplanes. Moving on to Western Hossin. Western Hossin is actually, in my opinion, the best section of the whole continent, and that's really saying something given that a lot of bases here are pretty mediocre. I want to give a highlight to Genudyne. You never fight here, but it's the coolest base in the game. More shit like this, please. It's the holographic, like, continents inside the buildings. Awesome. I love it. Great conceptual design. I don't know if it plays well because you hardly ever get to play here, but from doing 1v1v1 some test, it's fun. It's a cool base. More actually unique designs like this, please. It's a lot of fun. It's cool. Gnon and its surrounding bases pretty much all stink. It's just a really weird place to put a tech plant. Honestly, if I were the developers, I would move all the major facilities around. I would switch Beidel and Huracan with each other, and I would switch Ixteb and Zots with each other. If we're going to keep Hossin as this generic farming con where everything just farms in the middle, just put the biolabs here and allow you to skip around them with lattice links, because being able to skip biolabs is actually a good feature. Why hasn't it been done for containment sites on Izmir? The camp stations on Hossin are generally never fun to fight in. Nobody ever fights them. Just move them to the outer lanes, because if nobody's going to play at them anyway, just keep them out. You can switch their auxiliary bases with maybe ones near the warp gate they don't get fought out with as much. In general, the camp stations, there's really no point to keep them so close to the middle action, because nobody will ever play for them anyway. Tech plants are generally fine where they are, but I would like to see them perhaps moved in a little bit, maybe more towards center, but other than that, I think they're fine. They're kind of fine where they are. You don't really see fighting at them, because they're just not fun to attack. Anyway, back to Eastern Hossin. Gnon Southern is terrible. It's just terrible. Please, just delete it. Rework it. I don't care. Johari Cove is... It's okay. It needs a lot more hardcover for attackers, because it's way too easy for defenders to just literally pound you from this upper area right here. I would add more hardcover for attackers. Other than that, it's fine, I guess. Also, please name it the Vanu Lubrication Depot like God intended. Please don't ruin this moment for everyone. Rudo's Distillery is fine. I actually like... This kind of close teleporter spawn is great. More bases on Hossin need this to reduce the amount of sheer running. Other than that, Rudo's Distillery is actually fine. I probably wouldn't touch it much. Maybe a little more cover for Sunderers. Other than that, it's fine. Vital Stockpile is fine, could use some more hardcover for defenders, notably, as to protect themselves from getting shit on by Air and Hesh, but whatever, it's fine. Cairn Station is a tower base, and tower bases mean nothing on Hossin, so nobody gives a shit about it. That's pretty much all I have to say about actually, designated sections of Hossin. It's a lot of rambling, because Hossin is largely okay. I don't think Hossin ultimately is a particularly great continent. I don't enjoy playing on Hossin as much as I do playing on Amherst or a good Indar. But it's fine. In general, a lot of the ideas I've just thrown at here, I realize are either wildly impractical, not really worth the time, or generally wouldn't make a lot of change. But they're ideas that I think could be done to make Hossin better, and I realize that I am a shitter. In fact, some of these opinions are probably absolutely dogshit terrible, and please tell me if so. But Hossin's okay. Ultimately, I think Hossin's probably the least needed changes of all the 5 continents. So if by miracle chance that some developer is watching this, you don't need to touch Hossin for a little while. Keep Hossin the way it is, it's fine. A lot of the real changes I make to this continent, such as the aforementioned minor changes to construction sites, are really just small continent cleanup that can be done sometime. All the more major changes like switching bases around, outright fucking deleting Ziggurat and Nettlemeyer, they're fine as is, I just don't like playing in them. It's entirely selfish. I don't like playing in them. I don't think they're fun. That's the only reason I'd rework them entirely. In fact, we've seen that developers can actually prove themselves to design some rather quite intelligent bases on New Esamir and New Osher. And a lot of those base designs are rather marred by the shitty continents they're on and the shitty spawn designs given to them, rather than the fact that they're actually bad bases to play in. I actually do like some of the bases on Esamir and Osher, but the continents themselves are just ass. Why not stick some buildings from Desolation in here? I mean, hell, you can make some of the construction sites more interesting that way. Anyway. Just throwing out ideas. Please let me know what you think. I intend to eventually cover all 5 continents. And, yeah, thank you if you're still here, and I will see you all another time. Bye.